So firstly, we'll start off by discovering different formulas in conditional formatting. Then we'll move on to see exactly how we can apply the match, index, weekday, and end of month functions. And last but not least, when we're working with large data sets, it is best to split our views in order to see exactly what we're working with. But we'll go into a little bit more detail at the end of the lesson. So let's jump straight into this information-packed lesson, starting with conditional formatting. We will be exploring new ways in which we can use conditional formatting, and we'll also learn how to use different filters in order to highlight specific information. Conditional formatting can be extremely useful to help us explore and analyze data, also to detect a variety of issues. It helps us to identify patterns and trends, and this is all simply done by changing the appearance of the cells according to the conditions which you've applied. This is done in a few simple steps. So first you'll start off by going to the styles group, then moving over to conditional formatting, creating a new rule, and last but not least, selecting your very own format. But how about we hop over to Excel and see this in action? So here we have reviews from TripAdvisor from the hotels in the City of Light, Las Vegas. Our data includes 21 hotels which are located in Las Vegas Strip. We have over 504 online reviews which were collected between January and August of 2015. In our first column, we can see the country where the reviewer is from. Then we can also see other things like which facilities they have. Do they have a pool, gym, tennis court, spa, casino, or even Wi-Fi? But remember, for now, we don't really need that information. But you're more than welcome to go review all of this information within your free time if you'd like to know some more. So like we said, today we're going to apply conditional formatting. So we want to highlight some relevant information. For example, we'd like to know what the traveler type is for the Excalibur Hotel and Casino. Now, conditional formatting is typically applied to a single cell, but this time we're going to apply it to an entire row. So remember, we want to make sure that we are highlighting our entire table. So just to make our lives a little bit easier, we're going to copy the name by pressing Ctrl+C, making sure we spell it exactly correctly. So we'll start by selecting all our information in our table, selecting Ctrl+A. Then we'll go over to our home group. In our styles group, you can see conditional formatting. Now just a reminder, if you'd like to highlight a single cell, you can do that by going over to highlighting your cell rules. But remember, for today's lesson, we want to highlight an entire row. Therefore, we'll select New Rule. Now, in order to select an entire row, we need to make sure that we're entering a formula. So we'll choose the last option from the Select Rule type, and it says Use a formula to determine which cells you'd like to format. Of course, it being a formula, it's going to start with an equals to. Now, we can see that within our table, the names of the hotels are in column H. So we're going to add a $sign to make sure that it's only searching in column H and select H. We need to make sure that it equals to our hotel name. So we'll say equals to, open our inverted commas, Excalibur Hotel and Casino, close our inverted commas, and once you're happy, you can select your format. So going over to format, we select exactly which color we would like all the rows to be filled with. So in our case, let's say blue. Click OK, and click OK once again. So once we clicked OK, we can see it highlights all the Excalibur Hotel and Casinos. Here we're easily able to see that it's mainly couples or friends that are coming to this hotel. But now let's say we want to add another rule. So let's say we'd like to see if families are going to Caesar's Palace, and which Caesar's Palace have a rating higher than 3. So we'll start by selecting our table once again, then go over to conditional formatting and set a new rule. We still want to use our formula as we're looking for a variety of different things. So we'll say equals to, this time we'll use the AND formula. Open your brackets, use your $sign to make sure that it's looking in the column H, is equals to, inverted commas, Caesar's. Now remember, you want to make sure that your spelling is perfectly accurate in order for Excel to find it. And close your inverted commas. Then we're going to have our comma once again. Then this time we'll say G2, as we can see that it needs to be within the G column, that's where we can find families, is equals to families, and close our inverted commas, comma, last but not least, we want to look in column E2 in order to find a value which is greater than 3, and close our brackets. Now we need to double check that we are very happy with our formula, because as you can see, here I have not put H2, so we simply go back, add a 2, and of course we want to add our dollar signs too. So add your dollar sign, and add your dollar sign to make sure we're looking within those columns. Now once you're happy, we can go over to Format, select whichever color, click OK, and OK once again. Once you've clicked OK, you can scroll all the way down and you'll find that your rows are highlighted. This will be the rows with Caesar's Palace that have the word families within it, and of course a rating which is higher than 3. And it's as simple as that. Now we've used the AND function, but I would like you to go and use the OR, if, or counter functions with your conditional formatting and see exactly what this magical tool can do. But now talking about functions, this brings us over to our next topic. Our next core topic will be the index, match, lookup, weekday, and end of month functions. So let's see what they do. Firstly, starting off with index. Now the index function can be found in the lookup and reference functions in Excel, and is most commonly used with the next function, which is the match function, but we'll have a look at that in more detail. And it will show you the values at a given position within a range or an array. So basically, we can say that it's a bit of an alternative for the VLOOKUP function. Now there are two forms of the index function, the array format and the reference format. Firstly, the array format is an index function which you use to return a value of a specified cell or a range of cells. The syntax is equals to array, which is a specified array or range of cells, and this is a required argument, the row number, which shows the row number for the specified array. When this argument is 0 or blank, it will default to all the rows in the array provided. Then last but not least, we get our column number, and this denotes the column number of the specified array. Like the row number, if the argument is set to 0, it defaults to all the rows in the array, but this is an optional argument. Secondly, we get our reference format. Now the reference format is used to return the reference of the cells at an intersection of a row and a column. So the syntax is as follows. Index, open your brackets, reference, which is a reference to one or more cells. When we use more cells, they need to be separated by a comma and enclosed within brackets. Then we have the row number, and this refers to the number of the row of the specified area. When the argument is set to 0 or blank, it will also default to all the rows in the row provided. Then the column number, and of course, this shows the column number in the specified array. Once again, when the argument is set to 0 or blank, it will default to all the rows in the array provided. And last but not least, your area number. This is a reference to multiple ranges. Area number indicates which range you'd like to use. Areas are ordered by the numbers which they are specified in. If the area number is not specified, it will default to the value of 1. So the reference is taken from the first area in the supplied range. But let's have a look at the index function in action. So the index function is used to return a value in a table by giving the row and column number within that table. Now, of course, the easiest way to explain this would be to see it in action. So we'll say equals to, of course we're using our index function, open our brackets, and it will show us all our arguments. So firstly, the array. So this will be the entire table. For our example, we'll start at A2, and we need to go all the way down to R505. Remember we said that we have 504 different reviews. This means that we're not including the top row. And to make sure we're locking this in, press function F4. Then we'll go on to our next argument, the row number. So here we want to see exactly in which row we're searching. So let's start in row number 2. Then we'll move on to see the column number. And of course, we want to find the names of the different hotels. So our column number will be column number 14, which corresponds with N. So insert our 14, close our brackets, and press OK. As you can now see, we have our name of a hotel there. If we drag and drop the formula all the way down, it will continue to give us the same formula. But here's where we can find different values. So let's say we want to see what's located at number 78. Or even, let's go to number 102. And then we get another value. So let's go to number 398 and see what is there. But here you can see a list of all the different hotels which we can find. But an easy way to find it within its column and its row is to use the index. But now we'll move over to seeing exactly how that match function and the index function can work together. But first, let's explore the match function a little bit more. So like we said, the match function and the index function work together. Therefore, it can also be found in the lookup and the reference functions. It is used to look up and return positions of a value within an array. Now, the match function is typically used for financial analysis, as it gives us a sum of the values within the column. And as we already know, it's typically used with that index function. So the syntax for the match function is equals to match. The first argument is your lookup value. Now, this is the value which you want to look up, of course. Secondly, we have our lookup array. Now, this is a data array to be searched. And last but not least, we have our match type. Now, interestingly enough, this match type can be set to 0, 1, or even -1. When the value is set at 1 or omitted, the function cannot find an exact match, and it will return the position 1 below the lookup value. If this option is used, the lookup array needs to be in ascending order. When we enter 0, the function cannot find an exact match, and it will return an error. If this option is used, the lookup array does not need to be ordered. And then last but not least, if it's set at -1, the function cannot find an exact match and will return the position of the closest match above the lookup value. If this option is used, the lookup array needs to be in descending order. But now let's pop back over to Excel and see this in action. So remember, in the previous example, we used the rows numbers and the index formula. So now scrolling all the way through and trying to find all the names may be very time consuming and tedious. So let us use a different way of doing this time. So here we can see a list of all the hotel names. And we would like to know the exact number of cells where all these hotels are located. So this means we'll use the match formula. So we'll start off by saying equals to, and of course, we're busy using the match function. When we open our brackets, it shows us exactly the arguments which we need to enter. So first we'll start off by selecting the hotel's name. And of course, we can simply do this right over here by clicking right next to the name. Then we'll go comma, our lookup array. So as we know that it's all in column N, so we can select the whole of column N. And remember, we want to make sure that it's only searching in there. So we'll say function F4. And then last but not least, you can add your match type. So do you want your exact match, less than, greater than? But in most cases, we're simply just going to type 0 because we want an exact match. And then click OK. Here we can see it starts in row number 2. And if we drag and drop our formula all the way down, we can see exactly where the first time that this hotel's name is mentioned. And this is also quite a nice way to create a little bit of an index. So can you now see how they work together? Next, we'll be moving on to our weekday function. Now, the weekday function is used to return a date or return a number between 1 and 7. This number generally represents the day of the week. Sunday equals 1 and Saturday equals 0. But not to worry, you can always configure this to make it easier for you to understand. So the syntax is as follows. Serial number, which is the date for which you want to know exactly which day of the week it would be. And this needs to be a valid exact date in order to be in the serial format. And then lastly, the return type. This is the number representing the day of the week in the mapping scheme. The default is 1. So once again, let's pop back over to Excel in order for this to make more sense. So let's imagine we want to know exactly what day of the week it was, as we are working the year 2015, of the first month of the first day. And our next date would, let's say we want to know what the 9th day of the first month would be. Now we do this because we have a theory. The hotels tend to think that they have the best rating on the weekends as opposed to during the week. So we'd like to test this theory, and we can simply do this by using our weekday formula. So we're going to go over to our formula, enter weekday, and then it will show us exactly what we want to know. So our first argument is our serial number, where we can select our date. And then we can close our brackets and click OK. Now by dragging and dropping the formula down, once again you'll be able to see what the different days are. But a 5 and a 6. As we said, by default, Sunday is at 1. But now we want to make it a little bit easier for us to see. So we'll go Control 1, and this will allow us to format our cells. If we go all the way down to Custom, and instead of selecting the type as General, we can simply add 3 Ds, and you can see it will show us the day of the week. But did you know, if you add that 4th D, it will show you the full day of the week. So simply press OK. And you can do this exactly the same for the other cells too. So now we can see that on a Thursday was the 1st of the month, and on a Friday was the 2nd of the month. So now this is a great way for the hotels to be able to go through all of their information and see if their theories are correct. Now this brings us to our last function for today, and this is the end of month function. So the end of month function shows us the last day of the month. It does not matter if the month is in the past or the future. If the months are in the future, you will get a positive number, and if they're in the past, you will get a negative number. So the syntax is as follows. You get your EO month, the start date, and that's the date that represents the start date in a valid Excel serial format. And then you get the months. This is the number of months before or after the start date. But now once again, this makes a lot more sense when we are working in Excel. This is an extremely useful formula when it comes to finance, financial modeling, banking, accounting, and taxation. So we'll start off by having a look at different scenarios. So first we will start off by saying EO month, as we want to know what the end day of the month is. Then we'll open our brackets. So let's use our dates which we already have. So this will be our start date. And then secondly, we want the exact month. So we'll say 0 and close our brackets. So we'll find out what is the last day of the month of the first month of 2015. Now once again, we can see we have very funny numbers, but there's no need to worry. So we go over Control and 1. If we go over, we can select date and we click OK. Here we can now see that the last day of the month would be on the 31st of the month. So let's say we want to know what the 5th day would be after the last day of the month. So we simply add +5. And that will show us the 5th day would be the 5th of the 2nd month. And we can do this for many more too. So this is a good example to use if you're working in finance and you'd like to know, for example, from the last day of the month, what would be the 15th? Because all your tax forms may be due on that day. So far we've looked at only positive numbers. What happens if we want to look at the previous month? We can simply go -1, and then of course for now we don't want the 15 there, click OK. And it will show us once again that on 2014, the 12th month, the last day was on the 31st. And so you can go on to play with all these magnificent functions. But that's all we have time for today. So let's jump into our last topic of this lesson, and we see exactly how we can make our lives easier by working with many different cells, using freeze planes, multiple windows, switch windows, and how to split your data. Freeze planes are a great way to view the cells or the columns which you need to without scrolling up or down. So let's jump straight over to Excel because this makes a lot more sense when we see it in action. So in our worksheet for today, we have all the data which contains all the guests and the hosts of Airbnb in New York City in 2019. Now we can use this information to see which hosts are the best hosts. As we can see in the first column, we have the ID of the Airbnb, and then we have the name. Now let's say, for example, we're trying to scroll through all of this information. But as you can see, as we're scrolling down, we're no longer able to see the titles of every column. So we can sort this out by using freeze panes. So in order to freeze a panel, we're going to go all the way to our view option in our ribbon. From there, in the window group, we can see freeze panes over there. Clicking on the drop-down list. Now on this drop-down list, you can see you can freeze the top row. So once we've frozen the top row, then it's nice and easy for us to see the titles of each. But now let's say, for example, we'd like to freeze more than one pane. And as we can see here, we only have the option of freeze the top row or freeze a column. So what we simply can do is click the column to the right-hand side of whichever columns you would like to be frozen, and then we select the first option. Once we've selected the first option, as we're scrolling from left to right, you can see exactly that it's keeping the first two rows. And of course, we can do exactly the same thing when it comes to our top rows too. So as we're scrolling all the way up and down, it will keep whichever row was above where you'd selected your freeze plane on. So this is a nice and simple way to make sure that you're always able to view the information which you would like to see. But now let's move on to a new window. Sometimes you need to see more than one area of your worksheet. Now opening a new window is a great way to do this, and it's far easier if you're using a few screens too. The more windows you have open, the better. So let's see how this can be done when we go back over to Excel. So there's certain moments where we need to work in different areas of our worksheet at the same time. So we have a few options to do this. First, we're going to go back to our View tab. In our View tab, you can see there's an option which says New Window. As you click on that new window, of course, a new window is going to open. And these two windows are exactly the same with the same information. But did you know, as we're using the different windows too, it's nice and easy, as when we edit information on the one, it's automatically going to edit the information on the other one too. So this is a great way to have multiple windows open. So let's say as we said, if you have a few screens open, then of course, you can always rearrange it with the windows in order for them to look exactly the same. And as it reflects, we don't need to edit any of them after the fact. It's nice and simple and makes our lives a lot easier. This feature is extremely helpful to compare data across our files. We can create 3, 4, or even more windows. But remember, this may only be for specific occasions. Now, if we want to go back and close a window, we can simply go back to the upper right-hand side and close our window to have our main window open once again and re-maximize our main window back to shape. But now that's not all. We also have the split function. So navigating through different areas of the screen makes it possible for you to use the split function. But let's see how this works. So if you'd like to use different parts of your worksheet, we can always open different windows or use a split function. So before using this function, we need to make sure that we don't have any frozen areas. So in your views, go to make sure that there aren't any frozen panes. On your Windows group once again, we can go and use the function split. This means that it's going to split our workbook. So instead of freezing the planes, you can simply scroll through the different areas as they have been split according to how you need to view your data. But best of all, you can always move exactly where you'd like your splits to be. Just because Excel already splits it in the middle, it doesn't mean that that's where your splits have to remain. You can split them according to how you need to view your data. Today we've learned a few more exciting functions on Excel, as well as how we can go about viewing different screens in order to understand our data a little bit better. So can you remember, when we were doing the conditional formatting, I said your lesson challenge for this lesson is to use the or, if, or counter functions for conditional formatting. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson of Excel as much as I have, and I look forward to seeing you for your next lesson. Bye for now.